You know that feeling when you finally decide to upgrade your home theater sound, you find a subwoofer on sale for a fraction of the price, you bring it home, and after a weekend of excitement the bass just sounds thin, or the unit rattles on its own. That regret is why I pause before clicking add to cart on any budget-driven subwoofer. The question I keep asking myself is whether I'm trading a little extra cash for a system that actually integrates into a room without turning it into a shaky mess. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. When I first heard about the Earthquake Sound MiniMe DSP 15-inch sealed sub, the name alone promised something different. MiniMe suggests a compact footprint, while DSP hints at the kind of fine-tuning most cheap models lack. I spent a few days reading forum threads about sealed versus ported enclosures, the importance of front-firing alignment for tight rooms, and how digital signal processing can save you from hunting down the perfect crossover point with a separate processor. The consensus was clear: if you want a sub that can sit in a modest living room, blend with the main speakers, and still give you that deep, controlled thump for movies and music, you need a combination of a well-designed driver, enough power, and some way to adjust it to your space. That's exactly the promise the MiniMe DSP makes. So, who should actually consider this box? If you're the type of viewer who watches action movies and enjoys feeling the low-end rumble of explosions, but you don't have a cavernous home theater or a dedicated subroom, the MiniMe sealed design is a practical match. A sealed enclosure delivers tighter, more accurate bass that doesn't bleed into the mid-range, which is ideal for a small to medium-sized room where you want the bass to feel present but not overwhelming. The front-firing layout also means you can place the sub right against a wall or even a corner without worrying about the booming effect you get from rear-firing designs. For gamers who need that instant, punchy low-frequency response for explosions in first-person shooters, the fast transient response of a sealed driver is a real advantage. On the flip side, if your primary use is a massive home theater that fills a large living room or a dedicated media space, you might find the MiniMe sealed enclosure a bit conservative. Ported boxes can move more air and produce higher SPL, sound pressure level, at lower frequencies, which some movie enthusiasts prefer for those earth-shattering bass notes in a big room. Also, if you're a basshead who cranks the volume to the max for parties and wants that deep, vibrating floor feel, you'll probably need a larger, ported sub or a pair of them. In those scenarios, the MiniMe could feel underpowered despite its 1000-watt peak Class D amplifier. Let's talk about the practical strengths that become evident once the sub is wired into a typical 2-channel or 5.1 setup. The first thing I noticed is the built-in DSP. Most budget sealed subs give you a simple volume knob and maybe a low-pass filter, leaving you to guess where the crossover should sit. The MiniMe, however, offers up to 25 bands of equalization and continuous phase control. In real-world terms, that means you can dial in the exact point where the sub hands off to your main speakers, smoothing out any hole in the frequency response that would otherwise make dialogue sound hollow or cause the bass to feel disconnected from the rest of the soundtrack. I spent about 10 minutes using the supplied software to set a crossover around 80 Hz, then nudged a few mid-bass bands to compensate for my room's natural boost at 60 Hz. The result was a seamless blend that felt natural even during quiet dialogue scenes. Another strength is the 15-inch high-excursion driver. While a sealed box doesn't need a gigantic cone to move a lot of air, the larger diaphragm still helps the sub produce deeper notes without straining. In practice, this translates to a consistent thump that you can feel when a low-frequency rumble rolls through, yet the sub remains tight enough that the notes don't linger. I tested it with a mix of movie soundtracks, orchestral music, and a bass-heavy EDM track. The sub reproduced the sub-bass in the Dark Knight score without the muddiness you sometimes hear in smaller sealed subs, and the EDM drops hit hard enough to make the couch vibrate without causing the cabinet to shake apart. Now, the weaknesses that become apparent after a few weeks of use. The first is the reliance on the included DSP software for fine-tuning. The interface is functional but not the most intuitive. There's a learning curve if you've never played with digital equalization. It's not a deal-breaker, but you'll need to spend a few minutes watching a tutorial or reading the manual to get the most out of those 25 bands. Second, the sub's power rating is listed as 1000 watt peak, which sounds huge, but the continuous RMS power is lower, as is typical for Class D amps. In everyday listening at moderate volumes, you won't notice any limitation, but if you push the volume to the